In 1900, a 38-year-old man stood in front of the most, ruthless, powerful bankers in America. This was at the University Club in New York.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about a room that included J.P. Morgan, right?
Exactly. Men who could literally ruin you with just a flick of a pen. And this man, Charles M. Schwab, stands up and talks for 90 minutes.
And he didn't even have a presentation, did he?
No. No spreadsheets, no physical prototype, no slide deck of customer acquisition costs or whatever. But by the time he sat down, he had mesmerized J.P. Morgan into buying out Andrew Carnegie.
Which is just wild to think about.
It's unbelievable. He effectively willed the United States Steel Corporation, which was a billion-dollar empire, into existence. I mean, it was the largest financial transaction in history at the time, and it was generated entirely from a specific, invisible architecture in this one guy's mind. And today, we're extracting that exact blueprint.
It's the perfect place to start, honestly, because what Schwab did that night, well, it wasn't magic. And it wasn't just charisma either. He was deploying a really highly specific psychological mechanism. Right. Because, we tend to think of wealth building or career success as purely mechanical. Like, you lay the bricks, you write the code, you clock the hours, and that physical output equals the reward.
Yeah, the standard grind.
Exactly. But when you look at how the titans of industry actually operated, that physical blueprint gets flipped entirely on its head. The foundation isn't physical effort, it's mental alchemy.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today for you. Because, you probably already know the legend of the source material we're looking at. We are doing a deep dive into Napoleon Hill's 1937 classic, Think and Grow Rich.
The absolute granddaddy of all personal development literature.
Yeah, exactly. But what we're interested in today isn't like the surface-level quotes you see plastered on social media. We are breaking open the engine. We want to see the actual psychological mechanics Hill pulled from over 500 of the wealthiest people of his era.
People like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and, Carnegie himself.
Right. So our mission today is to treat this like a masterclass. We are going to extract all 13 foundational principles of achievement from this text. And for every single one, we're going to look at the why and the how, translating that 1930s industrial era philosophy into concrete, logical frameworks.
Frameworks you can use to scale a business, land a massive promotion, or pivot your career right now today.
Yeah, but we really have to frame this correctly for you, the listener, right out of the gate.
We do, because this text took 25 years of intense research to compile. It is a synthesis of behavioral patterns, but the core premise often trips people up.
Oh, big time.
The promise of the book is that anyone who follows these exact steps can transmute a thought impulse, which is something entirely intangible, into physical financial reality.
Which is exactly where I need to stop you, because, I struggle with this premise.
Yeah.
If we strip away the 1930s mysticism, the title is literally Think and Grow Rich. Are we actually saying that just sitting on my couch thinking really hard about $1 million is going to make it appear?
Right.
Because that sounds like a late-night infomercial gimmick. It sounds like a complete detachment from reality,
It's a completely fair objection, and, well, it's one the text actually anticipates right from the start. Thinking is merely the catalyst.
Okay.
The source explicitly warns that nature enforces a strict law of economics, which is that there is no such thing as something for nothing.
Right. No free lunch.
Exactly. You cannot manifest wealth out of thin air without an exchange of value. What the text is actually describing is how to rewire your psychological habits.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, it's so that your actions become intensely focused and your planning becomes so unyielding that the physical result is basically inevitable. The thinking part is about completely altering your internal operating system so that you stop self-sabotaging and start executing at a genius level.
Okay, that makes infinitely more sense. It's not magic, it's cognitive reprogramming.
Precisely.
And that reprogramming starts with the first foundational concept in the text, which is desire. But the author draws a massive, heavy line between just a casual wish and what he calls a burning desire.
Yeah, it's an obsession that literally leaves no room for failure.
Right. And the ultimate case study for this is the story of Edwin C. Barnes.
Barnes is just a fascinating psychological study. I mean, here's a guy who developed a singular overriding obsession. He wanted to go into business with Thomas Edison.
Not work for him.
Exactly. He wanted to be his partner.
Which is wild because, he has two seemingly insurmountable problems. First, he has absolutely no money for a train ticket to Edison's lab in New Jersey. And more importantly, he has never even met Thomas Edison in his life.
Right. The logical, conscious mind of an average person would stop right there and say, well, I don't have the resources, so I need a more realistic goal.
Yeah, like, I'll just get a job at the local mill.
Exactly. But Barnes didn't have a casual wish, he had a burning desire. So he actually sneaks onto a freight train, traveling by what they called blind baggage, and he shows up at Edison's laboratory.
Just showed up.
Shows up. And Edison later wrote about this encounter. He said Barnes looked like an ordinary tramp, like an absolute vagabond. But there was something in the expression of his face that conveyed he was willing to stake his entire existence on getting what he came for.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that for a second. Because he didn't walk in and say, hey, Mr. Edison, I'll try this out for a few months, and if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to my hometown.
No.
He burned his ships.
Yeah.
The text uses that classic analogy of the military commander who unloads his troops on enemy shores and then literally sets fire to his own boats. He tells his men, we win or we perish.
It forces the issue.
Yeah. By doing that, Barnes completely eliminated the psychological safety net that breeds complacency. When you have a fallback plan, your brain naturally gravitates toward it the second things get difficult.
That's just human nature.
Right. Barnes removed the fallback. He took a menial, sweeping job just to be inside Edison's building, and he waited for years until a specific opportunity, which was the Edison dictating machine, finally appeared. And he sold that machine so aggressively and effectively that he eventually became Edison's partner.
And that transition from a vagabond to a business partner, it wasn't accidental. The text breaks down the translation of desire into physical reality into 6 highly specific steps.
Yeah, let's go through those.
So this is the literal checklist Barnes unknowingly followed, and it's the core of the methodology. Step 1, fix in your mind an exact, precise amount of money or a specific goal. Not just, I want to be wealthy, exactly how much.
Be specific.
Yes. Step 2, determine exactly what you intend to give in return. Because, again, no something for nothing.
Right.
Step 3, establish a definite date. Step 4, create a definite plan and act immediately, whether you feel ready or not.
That's the hard part for most people.
Oh, definitely. Step 5, write all of this down in a clear, concise manifesto. And step 6, read this written statement aloud twice daily. Once right before sleep and once upon waking. And as you read it, you must see, feel, and believe yourself already in possession of the goal.
I really want to translate this into a modern application for the listener because reading a manifesto twice a day sounds, I don't know, a bit esoteric.
It can sound that way, yeah.
So let's look at the psychology here. Let's say you want a massive promotion at your corporate tech job. Most people walk into an annual review and say, I work hard, I'd like a bump in salary.
Which is just a wish.
Exactly. That is a wish. To apply this methodology, you have to engineer a burning desire. You write down the exact salary, let's say $150,000. You pinpoint the exact new workflow, the specific coding project, or the exact revenue increase you're going to give the company in exchange for that money.
And you set a date.
Yes. You set a date of December 1st. You write this down and read it every morning and night. What you are actually doing here is training your reticular activating system.
Ah, right, the brain's filter.
Yeah, the part of your brain that filters information. By obsessing over this specific exchange of value twice a day, you force your brain to notice the micro opportunities, the office politics, the efficiency gaps in your company that you would normally just ignore.
It's like you're programming your brain's search engine to only look for paths to that $150,000.
Exactly.
That is precisely the mechanism at work. And the text provides an incredibly emotional anecdote to prove how deeply this kind of intense, cultivated desire can alter physical reality.
This story is wild.
It really is. It's the story of the author's own son, Blair. So Blair was born without ears, and the doctors delivered a definitive verdict. They said he would be completely deaf and mute for his entire life.
But Napoleon Hill absolutely refused to accept that reality. He decided in that moment that his son would hear and speak, basically defying all medical logic.
He did. He planted a burning desire in his own mind, and then as the boy grew, he systematically transplanted that desire into his son's mind.
How do you even do that with a child?
Well, he didn't frame the deafness as a tragic liability. Through daily bedtime stories and constant reinforcement, he framed it as a unique asset. He made Blair believe he was destined for something extraordinary because of his condition.
Wow.
And over the years, that implanted desire forced the boy to constantly search for solutions. He found ways to hear slightly through bone conduction, by pressing his teeth against a phonograph.
That's incredible.
Right? And eventually in college, he discovered a specific electrical hearing aid that finally worked for him. But the crucial part is what happened next.
Because he didn't just stop there.
No. Because his brain was wired with this burning desire to turn his handicap into a massive advantage, he didn't just put the hearing aid in and live a quiet life. He analyzed the manufacturer's entire business model, formulated a massive expansion plan, pitched the company, and built a lifelong career bringing that exact technology to millions of other deaf individuals.
The desire bridged the gap between a perceived impossibility and a massive physical reality.
Yes.
Which brings us to a massive psychological hurdle, I think. You can have all the desire in the world, but desire alone, if you don't actually believe it's possible, just creates crippling anxiety.
Absolutely.
You're just agonizing over something you want but can't have. So how did Carnegie's circle bridge that gap between wanting something and actually believing they could achieve it? That's where the concept of faith comes in, which is principle 2.
Yes. Faith is described in the text as the head chemist of the mind. When you blend a burning desire with the intense emotion of faith, your subconscious mind picks up that frequency, translates it, and acts upon it. It removes the friction of self-doubt that normally sabotages your execution.
Okay, I have to push back here again.
Go for it.
Let's say I'm listening to this right now, and my bank account is literally zero. My startup just failed. If I sit there and act like I have absolute faith that I'm going to be a millionaire next year, isn't that just delusion?
Well,
And where does this philosophy draw the line between faith and just sheer financial recklessness? Because telling someone who is broke to just have faith feels kind of dangerous.
that is a critical distinction to make. The text isn't advocating for blind, reckless optimism where you go gamble your rent money because you have faith, you'll win it back.
Okay.
Faith in this context is a state of mind that is deliberately induced through repetition of instructions to the subconscious. It is self-suggestion. The text acknowledges that you might not naturally have faith, especially if you are facing failure.
Right, because why would you?
Exactly. So you have to manufacture it. You conduct yourself as if you are already in possession of the thing you desire, not by spending money you don't have, but by adopting the posture, the decision-making framework, and the emotional resilience of the person who has already achieved that goal.
So it's like fake it till you make it, but on a deep neurological level.
Exactly. If you act the part and you emotionalize the thoughts, your mind eventually accepts it as truth. And that brings us back to Charles M. Schwab at that dinner in 1900.
Oh, yeah.
When he proposed the United States Steel Corporation, he wasn't just guessing. He had such absolute, unwavering faith in his vision of mass production, of streamlining the steel industry and capturing foreign markets, that he completely neutralized the skepticism of the most cynical bankers on earth.
Right. J.P. Morgan didn't buy a spreadsheet. He bought Schwab's absolute conviction.
Yes. Morgan literally told him, if you can get Carnegie to sell, I will undertake the matter. That $600 million profit was born from faith.
So if you're a startup founder today pitching venture capitalists, you have to realize that VCs look at financial projections all day long.
They do.
They know your year 3 revenue projections are completely made up. What they're actually evaluating is you. You can't just present a dry slide deck. You have to walk into that room with the visionary face of Charles M. Schwab.
You have to radiate that certainty.
Right. You have to speak and conduct yourself as if your company is already a unicorn, as if their investment is a privilege, not a lifeline. Your absolute internal belief becomes a magnetic, persuasive force that just overrides their logical skepticism. You are transferring your induced faith directly into their minds.
But how do you actually induce that faith on a daily basis? Because, you can't just flip a switch. That requires a mechanism, which is principle 3. The text calls it autosuggestion.
Right.
Autosuggestion is the agency of communication between that conscious, reasoning mind of yours and your subconscious mind.
And this is where the mechanics get really interesting, because the text explicitly warns that plain, unemotional words do not influence the subconscious mind at all.
Not even a little bit.
You can repeat a mantra like, I am wealthy, I am successful, a million times in the mirror, but if you feel nothing while you say it, absolutely nothing happens. Your subconscious just ignores it.
Yeah.
I want to bring in a modern analogy for this because it helps it click. Think of your subconscious mind as a highly advanced recommendation algorithm, like the algorithm on your favorite social media app.
Okay, I like this.
If you mindlessly scroll past a video, the algorithm doesn't care. It doesn't register. But if you stop, watch it 3 times, and feel an intense emotional reaction, whether it's, outrage or joy, the algorithm registers that engagement. It says, oh, they care about this deeply. Let's feed them 10,000 more videos exactly like this.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The author actually uses the analogy of a fertile garden. If you do not deliberately plant the seeds of your desired crops, the weeds of fear, poverty, and doubt will naturally take over.
Because the wind just blows them in.
Exactly. The weeds don't need any cultivation. They just grow on autopilot.
Right. The doom scrolling, the toxic office gossip, the 24-hour news cycle. That is the wind blowing weed seeds into your mental garden all day long. And most people are completely passive about it.
They really are.
They leave the door to their subconscious wide open and let the world program their algorithm for fear and anxiety. And then they wonder why they feel paralyzed.
To succeed, you have to become the ruthless program director of your own mind. You must intentionally close your mind to negative influences. And this isn't about, toxic positivity.
Right.
It's about algorithmic curation. You have to actively curate your inputs and then deliberately read your goals with deep, intense emotion. You have to literally trick your subconscious into feeling the thrill of the success before it happens, so the algorithm starts searching the physical world for ways to make it a reality.
Okay, so you've curated your mental diet. You've used autosuggestion to program your internal algorithm with a burning desire and absolute faith. But raw belief isn't enough, right?
It's just the start.
You can't just sit in a room vibrating with faith and expect a business to build itself. You need actual data to execute on. Which brings us to a massive paradigm shift in the text, Principle 4, the difference between general knowledge and specialized knowledge.
The author draws a very sharp, almost aggressive line here. General knowledge, no matter how vast or impressive it sounds at a dinner party, is of very little use in the accumulation of wealth.
It's just trivia, basically.
Yeah. Knowledge is only potential power. It only becomes actual power when it is organized into definite plans of action and directed toward a definite end.
This part of the text completely dismantles the traditional view of the education system, I think.
Yeah.
And the source material brings up this famous libel suit involving Henry Ford.
Oh, this is a great story.
It's so good. So a Chicago newspaper printed an editorial calling Ford an ignorant pacifist. Ford was furious and actually sued them. So the newspaper's lawyers get Ford on the witness stand, and they try to prove to the jury that he is, in fact, ignorant. They start grilling him with all these obscure general knowledge trivia questions like, who is Benedict Arnold? Or how many soldiers did the British send to America?
Ford's reaction is legendary. He finally gets exhausted by this pointless trivia, leans forward, points his finger at the lawyer, and delivers this absolute masterclass of a response.
What does he say?
He says, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk, and by pushing the right button, I can summon to my aid men who can answer any question I desire. And then he says, now will you kindly tell me why I should clutter up my mind with general knowledge for the purpose of being able to answer questions when I have men around me who can supply any knowledge I require?
It is the ultimate intellectual mic drop.
Seriously.
Ford proved that true education isn't about memorizing a textbook. It's about knowing exactly where to get the specialized knowledge you need and how to organize it. It's like modern cloud computing or API integrations. I don't need to host massive amounts of raw data on my personal hard drive. I just need to know how to query the database when I need a specific output.
Exactly. Ford had a mastermind group, a network of experts that functioned as his database. And the text also stresses that if you are marketing your own specialized knowledge, if you are selling your personal services as an employee or a freelancer, you have to adhere to what it calls the QQS formula.
Okay, break that down. Quality, quantity, and spirit.
Yes. Quality, quantity, and spirit of service. Quality is the efficiency of your work. Quantity is the volume of work you produce. But the hinge that holds it all together is the spirit of service. That means having an agreeable, harmonious, cooperative attitude. The author warns that without the right spirit, all the quality and quantity in the world won't save your career.
No one wants to work with a brilliant jerk. There's a fantastic case study in the sources about this. During the Great Depression, there was an unemployed grocery salesman. The general economy was terrible, and general grocery sales were dead. But he had a little bit of specialized knowledge in bookkeeping.
Right.
Instead of just sending out generic resumes to, closed grocery stores, he takes a specialized course in accounting to sharpen that specific skill. Then he buys a light delivery truck, equips it with modern bookkeeping machinery, and creates a mobile bookkeeping office.
So smart.
He drives around to small merchants and manages their books for a nominal fee. He completely multiplied his income during a massive depression because he acquired specialized knowledge and applied imagination to how he delivered it.
That translates perfectly to today's economy. If you are sitting in a job right now and your industry is shifting, maybe AI is starting to automate the general tasks you do every day, do not panic.
Don't just give up.
Right, and you don't need to go back to school for a 4-year general degree either. Look for the micro gaps. Take a highly specialized 6-week online boot camp in AI prompt engineering or specific data analytics for your exact niche. Then package that unique skill.
Yeah, the text mentions a woman who helped her son secure a massive job by creating a tailored 50-page portfolio that diagnosed the target company's problems and offered specific solutions.
That is exactly what you do. Build a specialized portfolio, bypass the generic HR portal, hand it directly to a decision maker, and show them precisely the specialized value you bring.
But doing that requires you to see combinations that other people miss, which leads us to the next mechanism, Principle 5, imagination.
The workshop of the mind.
Yes, and it categorizes imagination into 2 distinct types, right?
Yes, synthetic imagination and creative imagination. Synthetic imagination is the faculty most of us use daily. It is the act of rearranging old concepts, existing ideas, or proven plans into new combinations. It doesn't create anything entirely out of thin air, it just works with the experience and observations you already have.
And the other one.
Creative imagination is much rarer. That is the faculty through which new ideas, direct hunches, and inspirations are handed over to the human mind from what the author calls infinite intelligence. It only functions when your mind is vibrating at an exceedingly high rate of emotional focus.
Let's focus on the synthetic imagination because that is the most actionable tool for the listener right now. I absolutely love the story and the sources about Asa Candler to illustrate this.
Oh, the Coca-Cola story.
Yeah. Candler was a simple drug clerk. One day, he buys a secret formula from an old country doctor, along with an old kettle and a wooden paddle. And he spent his life savings on this. Now, the white powder formula itself, just sitting in a jar, was relatively worthless.
Just a local medicine.
Right. But Candler added a mysterious, invisible ingredient, his synthetic imagination. He took this existing medicinal formula, synthesized it with an unbelievably aggressive, unprecedented global marketing plan, and that combination built the empire of Coca-Cola. He didn't invent the drink from scratch. He just imagined a radically different way to scale and distribute it.
It's the perfect example of rearranging the old into the new. If we connect this to our listeners, say you are a mid-level manager at a logistics company. You want to provide specialized value.
But you don't know how to code a new software.
Exactly. You don't need to invent a brand new technology. Use your synthetic imagination. Look at a communication software the marketing team is using. Take a workflow protocol from the customer service department and synthesize them. Combine those existing tools to create a completely new, frictionless workflow for the logistics team that saves the company $1 million a year.
You're simply repackaging old elements in a highly profitable way.
That is how you engineer a massive promotion.
Okay, so you have the desire, you've programmed the faith, you've acquired the specialized knowledge, and you've imagined a new combination.
Right.
But ideas are completely useless without execution. Now you have to build a machine. That is Principle 6, organized planning, the crystallization of desire into action.
This is where the philosophy gets intensely practical. To turn your imagination into physical reality, you must build an organized plan. And crucially, the text asserts that no individual has sufficient experience, education, or ability to ensure the accumulation of a great fortune without the cooperation of other people.
You can't do it alone.
You must form a mastermind alliance to execute your plan. But the most vital rule in this chapter regards failure. The author states that if your first plan fails, you must simply replace it with a new one. Do not quit. Defeat is merely a signal that your specific plan was not sound.
Thomas Edison is the ultimate patron saint of this concept, isn't he? He famously failed 10,000 times before perfecting the incandescent light bulb. He didn't view himself as a failure. He just successfully identified 10,000 plans that were unsound.
It's a completely different framing.
But I want to pivot slightly here because the text spends a huge amount of time in this chapter talking about leadership, specifically how to market your personal services as a leader. The workplace in 1937 was radically different from today.
Oh, entirely.
If you try to lead a modern, highly skilled tech team the way an industrial boss led a factory floor in the 30s, your team will quit in a week.
Hmm.
Nobody wants to be bossed around or micromanaged today.
That is incredibly observant, but here is where Napoleon Hill was actually remarkably prescient.
Really?
Yeah, the source material explicitly warns that the old paradigm of leadership by force was already becoming obsolete in 1937.
No way.
Yes. The text actively predicts that the future of industry belongs to leadership by consent and cooperation. It states that leaders who rely on fear, intimidation, or rigid dictatorship are doomed to fail. The new brand of leadership must view the employer-employee relationship as a true partnership.
That is mind-blowing that he saw that coming during the era of factory assembly lines. So applying this today, let's say you are a project manager and you launch a massive new software update and it completely crashes on day one. It's a total failure.
A nightmare scenario.
First, apply the Edison rule. The failure means the plan was bad, not you. Do not double down out of ego and try to force a broken system to work. Regroup with your mastermind, your core team of developers and strategists.
Do a blameless postmortem.
Yes. Build a new strategy and launch again. And when you lead that regrouping, do it strictly by consent. Partner with your team, ask for their specialized input, and share the credit when the second launch succeeds.
But, to even launch that second plan, you have to overcome the single greatest killer of execution. The author analyzed over 25,000 cases of men and women who had experienced failure, and he found that indecision and procrastination were at the very top of the 30 major causes of failure.
Wow, 25,000 cases.
And that brings us to Principle 7, decision, the mastery of procrastination.
The data he presents here is just stark. He observed that highly successful people reach decisions very quickly, and they change those decisions very slowly, if at all. People who fail do the exact opposite. They reach decisions agonizingly slowly, and they change their minds constantly at the first sign of friction.
The ability to make a firm decision requires immense courage because a true decision cuts off all other options. The text highlights one of the most staggering historical examples of this: the 56 men who signed the American Declaration of Independence.
Oh, this is a great example.
When they sat down in Philadelphia, they were not just signing a political complaint. They were making a collective decision to stake their lives, their personal fortunes, and their family's safety on a single objective.
Right, because if Washington's army had been defeated, every single one of those 56 men would have been arrested and hanged for high treason by the British Crown.
There was no going back.
That is a decision without a safety net. There was no, well, let's try revolution for a few months and see how it goes.
And yet, why do most of us in modern life, when the stakes are so much lower, fail to make firm decisions?
Why do we?
The text identifies a specific psychological block: the fear of criticism. We are paralyzed by what our relatives or friends or the general public might say. We stay in miserable, unfulfilling situations because the pain of the status quo is somehow more comfortable than the fear of being mocked for making a bold move and potentially failing.
Let's unpack why we care so much about this.
Yeah.
Say you are a corporate lawyer and you've realized you are utterly miserable and your burning desire is to open a bespoke culinary bakery.
Okay, quite the pivot.
Right. But the thing keeping you at the law firm isn't usually a lack of capital. It's the voices of your parents, your law school peers, and your spouse saying, "Are you crazy? You're throwing away a prestigious career to bake bread."
Exactly. And the fear of what they will think.
To apply this principle of decision, you have to recognize that well-meaning friends and family are often the most dangerous saboteurs of your ambition, purely out of their own anxiety. You must analyze your data, make the firm, unyielding decision to pivot, and stand like an absolute rock against their opinions.
As the text brilliantly advises, tell the world what you intend to do, but show it first.
Let your deeds speak.
Yes. Make the decision quietly, execute the plan, and present them with the physical reality.
But as soon as you make that decision and start executing, you are going to meet immediate, fierce resistance from the market, which requires Principle 8, persistence.
The sustained effort necessary to induce faith.
Right. The text notes that willpower and desire, when properly combined, make an irresistible pair. The stories in this chapter are some of my favorites because they illustrate how painful the lack of persistence can be. It starts with the legendary story of R.U. Darby.
Oh, the gold rush story.
Yes. So Darby's uncle catches gold fever. He goes west, stakes a claim, strikes a vein of gold ore, and goes back home to raise the capital for the heavy drilling machinery. They get the machinery out there, they start drilling, and things are looking incredible.
You're about to be rich.
Exactly. But then, the vein of gold simply disappears. They drill and drill, getting more and more desperate until finally, discouraged and exhausted, they just quit. They sell all of this expensive machinery to a local junk man for a few $100s and go home in complete defeat.
But here's where the story turns. Because that junk man wasn't a fool. Instead of just selling the machinery for scrap, he hires a specialized mining engineer to look at the fault lines in the earth.
Smart.
The engineer calculates that the vein hadn't disappeared, it had just shifted. He tells the junk man that the gold is exactly 3 feet from where Darby and his uncle had stopped drilling.
Oh, man.
The junk man starts the machines back up, goes down 3 feet, and pulls millions of dollars out of that mine. Darby quit 3 feet from unimaginable wealth.
It's agonizing to even think about. But the redemption arc of R.U. Darby is what matters here. Darby eventually went into the business of selling life insurance, and he used the agonizing trauma of stopping 3 feet from gold as his psychological engine. Whenever he pitched a client and the client said no, Darby refused to accept it as a final answer.
He remembered the gold.
He remembered the invisible gold 3 feet away. He used that sheer persistence to become one of a tiny fraction of men who sold over $1 million in life insurance annually back in those days.
Persistence isn't just about stubbornly banging your head against a wall, though. It's an emotional state that can overpower sheer physical force. The text provides a startling anecdote about a fierce uncle and a little sharecropper's daughter.
I love this one, too.
The uncle was a terrifying, intimidating man with a violent temper. One day, a little girl, the daughter of a tenant farmer, walks into his mill and quietly says, "My mammy says to send her 50 cents. The uncle screams at her, orders her to leave, and eventually grabs a barrel stave, marching toward her as if to strike her.
And any normal kid would have run for their life.
Exactly. But the child simply refuses to move an inch. She steps forward, looks right up into his furious eyes, and screams at the top of her lungs, "My mammy's got to have that 50 cents. And the fierce uncle completely crumbles. He drops the weapon, reaches into his pocket, and gives her the money. Her absolute, unwavering persistence completely short-circuited his physical dominance.
That is the ultimate playbook for modern B2B sales or anyone pitching creative ideas. When you get a no from a client, you have to treat it exactly the way Darby learned to treat it. A rejection is rarely a permanent objective failure. It is usually just the market testing your persistence.
They want to see if you actually believe in what you're selling.
Right. They are testing to see if you will fold and stop 3 feet from the gold. The text outlines a strict 4-step method to build immunity against this kind of discouragement. 1, a definite purpose backed by a burning desire. 2, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. 3, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences.
And 4, a friendly alliance with others who will encourage you to follow through.
And that 4th step, the friendly alliance, is the perfect bridge to the next major concept, Principle 9. The power of the mastermind. We've touched on it, but here the text formally defines it. The mastermind is the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between 2 or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose.
Okay, let's get real for a second, though.
Sure.
Is this just 1930s terminology for networking? Because, going to a hotel ballroom with a flimsy name tag, drinking cheap coffee, and handing out business cards to people you don't care about is generally a massive waste of time.
No, it is fundamentally different from superficial networking. The operative phrase in the definition is perfect harmony. If there is ego, competition, or distrust in the group, the mastermind does not exist.
Okay, that makes sense.
The text explores 2 advantages to this alliance. The economic advantage is obvious. You borrow the specialized knowledge and experience of others, effectively multiplying your own lifespan of learning. But the psychic advantage is much deeper. The author suggests that no 2 minds ever come together without creating a third, invisible, intangible force, which he likens to a third mind.
Like combining batteries.
Yes. When you connect multiple batteries on a single wire, the power output is exponentially greater than a single battery. Think of it like distributed computing today. If I want to render a massive, complex 3D animation, my single laptop will crash. But if I network 10 computers together in perfect sync, sharing the processing load, they can render it in minutes. The mastermind is distributed cognitive processing.
And the author points to Mahatma Gandhi as a profound example of this, right?
Yes. Gandhi didn't have money, he didn't have battleships, and he didn't have a formal military. But he generated unprecedented, world-changing power by aligning 200 million minds in perfect, peaceful harmony toward a single definite objective. He created a national mastermind that broke the British Empire.
So how do you apply this practically without trying to align 200 million people?
Right, on a smaller scale.
You curate a micro network. Instead of wasting time at random networking events, form a closed, strictly vetted advisory board of 3 or 4 trusted, ambitious peers in your industry. Commit to meeting twice a week, or even just a focused hour every Sunday morning.
And what do you do in that meeting?
The sole purpose of the meeting is to ruthlessly analyze and solve each other's professional bottlenecks. Because you have established absolute trust and harmony, their brains will spot the blind spots in your business that your ego won't let you see. The combined processing power will generate solutions you could never reach sitting isolated at your desk.
That is incredibly powerful. Now, we are about to transition into a chapter that usually makes people double take when they see it in a business book. Principle 10, the mystery of sex transmutation.
Yeah, that one definitely catches people off guard.
When you're reading about corporate strategy and suddenly hit this chapter, it throws you off.
Yeah.
Let's unpack what the text actually means by transmutation, because it's not exactly what it sounds like on the surface.
Transmutation simply means changing or transferring one element or form of energy into another. The text observes a fundamental biological reality. The desire for sexual expression is the most powerful, intense, and impelling of all human drives.
Unquestionably.
When individuals are driven by this desire, they develop extraordinary keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, and persistence. It is a biological superpower. However, the author argues that too often, the vast majority of people dissipate this immense energy purely through physical channels or obsessive, undirected thoughts.
They waste it.
Yes. Transmutation is the conscious, deliberate act of taking that intense, obsessive biological energy and redirecting it into a creative, professional, or artistic outlet.
The why behind this observation is what really hooked me, though. Hill studied hundreds of successful men and noticed a bizarre pattern. Most of them didn't achieve true monumental greatness until they passed the age of 40.
Which is interesting given how much we worship young founders today.
Right. His theory is that in their 20s and 30s, they are completely controlled by this biological cyclone, basically dissipating their energy. But once they hit 40, they learn to harmonize this intense drive with the balancing, grounding emotion of love. When you take the raw horsepower of sexual energy and channel it through the focused, stabilizing lens of love and professional purpose, the creative output becomes unstoppable genius.
It is fundamentally a lesson in extreme emotional regulation and energetic focus. The text explicitly states that sex alone is a mighty urge, but its forces are erratic and uncontrollable. It needs a governor, like a steering wheel.
The modern application for this is all about deep work and conquering distraction. We live in an era where our biological impulses are constantly being hijacked and dissipated by algorithms, dating apps, social media, advertising that uses sex to sell everything from cars to shampoo. Your attention and your biological energy are being siphoned off all day.
You're being drained.
Exactly. Transmutation is the act of reclaiming that energy. Think about the raw, obsessive, hyper-focused intensity you feel when you are passionately pursuing a new romantic interest. You don't get tired. You are incredibly creative. You overcome obstacles effortlessly.
They drive 5 hours just to see them.
Right. Now imagine if you could harness that exact same visceral intensity and intentionally redirect it into coding an app, writing a novel, or scaling a business. You are essentially overclocking your brain's processor by tapping into its deepest biological power source.
And that energy has to be directed somewhere. It gets directed into the control center, which brings us to principles 11 and 12, the subconscious mind and the brain.
The transmitter and the receiver.
Yes. The text treats these as highly integrated systems. The author uses the technology of his day, the radio, to explain how this works. He describes the brain as a radio broadcasting and receiving station.
So the subconscious mind is the sending station, the transmitter. It takes your thoughts and broadcasts them. And the creative imagination is the receiving set, picking up ideas, hunches, and vibrations from the ether or from other minds.
But here is the critical mechanical catch. Your brain's radio can only broadcast and receive effectively if you step up its vibration. And the only way to increase the frequency of your mind is through emotion. Cold, unfeeling logic does not transmit.
It'd have to have feeling behind it.
Exactly. The text provides a diagnostic list of 7 positive emotions you must actively cultivate: desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, and hope. Conversely, it lists 7 negative emotions you must ruthlessly identify and eliminate: fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger.
Because the subconscious doesn't care which one you use.
Right. The subconscious makes no distinction between positive or negative. It simply acts upon whichever emotions dominate your mind and translates them into reality.
So the modern application here is an aggressive curation of your daily mental environment. If you sit at your desk and engage in toxic office gossip, if you harbor deep, burning jealousy over a coworker's recent promotion, or if you constantly obsess over the fear of corporate layoffs, you are literally tuning your brain's radio to broadcast and attract failure.
We're asking for it, basically.
You are feeding the algorithm the exact data you don't want. You cannot experience jealousy and faith at the same exact moment. You must actively switch the dial. When the jealousy creeps in, you have to catch it, kill it, and transmute that energy into enthusiasm for your own definite purpose. You are the sole program director of your own mind.
And if you can master that discipline, if you can internalize all 12 of those preceding principles and maintain that high-frequency emotional state, the text promises that you finally unlock Principle 13, which is the sixth sense. This is described as the door to the temple of wisdom.
This is the apex of the entire philosophy, right? This is where it all culminates.
Exactly. The sixth sense is the portion of the subconscious mind referred to as the creative imagination. This is the state where hunches, sudden inspirations, and direct communication with what the author calls infinite intelligence occur voluntarily. But the text is crystal clear. This cannot be forced and it cannot be hacked.
It's an emergent property.
Yes. It only functions as a natural byproduct after you have mastered the previous 12 principles and completely cleared your mind of negative static.
There is a truly wild, fascinating anecdote in the text about how Napoleon Hill practically accessed this state. He created a mental protocol called the Invisible Counselors.
This is such a cool technique.
It's amazing. Every night, right before going to sleep, he would close his eyes and hold an imaginary cabinet meeting in his mind. He would vividly visualize historical figures he deeply admired, sitting around a boardroom table with him. Men like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Abraham Lincoln, Charles Darwin, Thomas Edison, and Henry Ford.
He's just projecting them in his mind.
Yeah, but he wasn't just daydreaming. He would actively imagine absorbing their specific characteristics. He would mentally ask Lincoln for courage and justice, or Edison for unyielding persistence. He would present his current real-world problems to this imaginary board and ask for their counsel.
And did it work?
He claimed that through this intense, prolonged visualization, his subconscious would synthesize all his specialized knowledge and deliver brilliant, highly practical solutions as if they were actually speaking to him.
It's a profound psychological trick to bypass the ego and access the deeper synthesis of the subconscious. But the author issues a very severe warning before you attempt this. To access the sixth sense, you must first sweep your mind completely clear of the 6 basic fears.
The 6 ghosts of fear.
Yes, these are the ghosts that paralyze human progress. The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death.
Wow, those are heavy.
They are. And the author argues that indecision and doubt are the subtle seeds that eventually grow into these massive fears. If any of these fears are lingering in your subconscious, the sixth sense simply will not function.
So how do we use this invisible counselor protocol today? Let's say you are preparing for a massive career move, maybe a high-stakes negotiation to sell your startup, and you are naturally terrified. First, you have to run a diagnostic on yourself. Recognize if the fear of poverty or the fear of criticism is clouding your judgment. Clear it out by reinforcing your faith.
Right.
Then go into a quiet room, close your eyes, and visualize a board of directors made up of your personal heroes. Maybe it's Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, or a mentor you deeply respect. Vividly imagine sitting at a table with them. Present your negotiation strategy to them. Ask them where the flaws are.
And your brain just does the rest.
Well, because you've spent months feeding your subconscious with intense desire, specialized knowledge, and faith, your brain acts like a localized large language model. It synthesizes all that data to the persona of the mentors you are visualizing. And a sudden hunch or a brilliant counteroffer strategy will flash into your conscious mind. You are organizing the hidden data in your brain to produce a conscious result.
That is a phenomenal way to articulate it. You are structuring your internal data to generate intuition on demand.
So as we step back and look at the whole picture, this entire masterclass journey we just took through these 13 principles, what does it all mean for the person listening right now?
That's the real question.
Success, whether you measure it in millions of dollars, a thriving, peaceful career, or just profound personal freedom, requires a deliberate, often painful transition. You have to actively move from a poverty consciousness, where you let the wind of fear, doubt, and external opinions dictate your algorithm, to a success consciousness, where you are the ruthless programmer of your own reality.
And if we connect this to the ultimate reality of our existence, the author uses a fantastic Cerbering metaphor toward the end of the text. Life is a checkerboard, and the player opposite you is time.
Oh, love this metaphor.
If you hesitate, if you lack decision, if you allow fear to paralyze your moves, your pieces will simply be wiped off the board by time. You are playing against a partner who is completely indifferent to your excuses and will not tolerate indecision. The 13 principles we've unpacked today are the master rules to play that game effectively.
And here is the provocative final thought I want to leave you with, pulling from that foundational theme we discussed at the very beginning. There is no such thing as something for nothing.
Right.
The law of economics is strictly enforced by nature. You can't just wish for a new career or $1 million. You have to exchange specific, specialized value for it. But I want you to flip that concept around. If you are currently sitting on the sidelines, refusing to define your burning purpose, letting the fear of criticism keep you paralyzed in a job you hate, what is the hidden price you are paying for that comfort?
That is a chilling but absolutely necessary question to confront. The toll of a poverty consciousness is collected invisibly every single day.
Exactly. We started this deep dive talking about physical blueprints versus mental alchemy. Building a physical house requires bricks and sweat and concrete. But building an extraordinary life requires you to master your own thoughts. If you refuse to take control of your internal algorithm, your mental foundation is just shifting sand, and time will wipe the board clean. So what is your inaction, your indecision, truly costing you right now?
That is the question only you can answer. But, well, you have the blueprint now.
So take that first step today. Start drawing the invisible architecture of exactly what you want. Thank you for joining us on this masterclass deep dive. Keep unpacking, keep questioning, and we will catch you on the next one.